So I will do quick introductions here, and then we'll get right to the questions. So first on screen, our meeting sponsor this week from the National Science Foundation, larger than life, Brandon Jones. Then moving left to right on the stage, our NASA Program Director, Amy Chen. Senior Advisor for GLOBE, is that right, Allison? Allison Leidner. From the Department of State, Dr. Kia Henry. And on the right, John McLaughlin from NOAA. So the way we'll work this, similar to yesterday's plenary Q&A, I will run around the room like a person going as fast as I can to get the microphone to you to ask questions. Think of questions now that you would want to hear from our sponsors. I will start off with an opening question, and each of them can take it if they like, and then I will go to some questions that were prepared in advance that were actually submitted in our question box, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, and then I was told we need to be done by 10 till 9, so that's the flow of the morning here. So first question, from your perspective, what are some notable, Oh, we're not recording yet. One moment, please. We have to record.
Recording in progress.
How many times have we heard that in the last 2.5 years with Zoom? Huh? We got good at that. Thank you, Eslam. From your perspective, what are some notable achievements of GLOBE over the last 10 years? It doesn't have to be comprehensive of 10 years, of course, but something you remember that you're proud of, that GLOBE and the GLOBE community has done. What would you like to share?
All right, well, having been with GLOBE for a while, there's been a lot of changes. I'm, I guess, almost a GLOBE dinosaur at this point in time. When I came to GLOBE, every teacher received a very heavy blue teacher's guide, and we would do most of our work by paper, including paper data sheets. So it's really amazing how much the program has evolved. And over the past 10 years, there have been so many changes, it's hard to catalog. Having heard the amazing report outs from the working groups yesterday, I was impressed by how many changes those working groups have implemented just in the past year, never mind in the past 10 years. But over the past 10 years, some, I think, really notable changes that have programmatically changed how this program functions is the introduction of e-training. Previously, every teacher had to be trained in person, and every participant, and that was a barrier for some participants who lived where there were no trainings occurring near them. And so I think the introduction of e-training has made the program much more inclusive and given another option for people to join our community. And also the expansion of participants beyond traditional K-12 schools and teachers to informal educators and to general members of the public has also been a game changer and really opened up the program and led to more data and more participants.
Yeah, that was great, John. And I wanted to ask something that Jill Karsten, which many of you know, right? He was the Brandon Jones before Brandon Jones' time in NSF, one of our federal sponsors. And I want to kind of repeat what she said during the working group session on Sunday, because I know that not everyone here was attending there. And I think, you know, as I got started in this position since about a May timeframe, there are a lot of historical documentations from the program's history that I have to read. That I was reading, and they were, you know, very informative and interesting. And one thing was, there was a report from 2012-ish timeframe. It's called a Way Forward report. And in that report, it outlined the possibility that we should organize GLOBE into having regional representation, which we do now, the RCOs, and also the working groups, so that the community as a whole has a way of participating, deciding, and on GLOBE implementation as a program as a whole. And, and Jill remarked, she was right there in the room when that happened, when the community discussed this. And she said, it was a grand experiment. Nobody knew if that was really going to work, especially given Globe's scope. And, I think those of you who were in that room, looking at where we charted the history of Globe since its beginning and where working groups step in and the amount of work that they have done over this time period, I think is quite remarkable. And Jill was really pleased how that grand experiment has panned out. So I want to add that to the list as well.
Anyone else on that one? No? Okay. One from the suggestion box. It actually worked. I loved hearing the presentation from the State Department. How can Globe students learn about diplomacy?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that there is, of course, the traditional way through education and through your school programs, anything you can do or classes to take to learn about diplomacy or international relations. But there's also what you're doing now, and that is participating in global efforts and participating in global education programs because you're actually practicing diplomacy. And so doing, as we know, is one of the best ways to learn. So you can supplement your education with actually doing, being a part of international programs. Also take advantage of either in your country or your region, any youth-centered international groups, model UN or youth parliaments, and also take advantage of any internships that you can apply for.
Thank you, Kia. The next one will, after my next card question, I will come to you, so raise your hand in just a moment. But does NSF, NOAA, or NASA fund research projects?
Well, I'll jump in there. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yes, most of what NSF supports is scientific research across every science discipline you can think of, but not medical or health related. So maybe the traditional natural and physical sciences and things of that nature, certainly the Earth system sciences. So the bulk of the programs that NSF manages and applies funding to are research programs. So the answer would be yes, but we also have programs that focus on education and workforce development, even teacher training, as well as public participation in science or citizen science. So we also have an array of programs that focus on broadening participation of individuals in the scientific enterprise and to conduct research. So we have a broad swath of programs all related to science.
Thanks, Brandon. And that's a hard act to follow since we at NOAA are much smaller in our granting enterprise than National Science Foundation. But people are still surprised by how much of our agency's budget goes out the door in grants. Partnerships are incredibly important for us to be able to do the work we do with oceans in the atmosphere. We can't do it without partners, and grants are a major way we support those partnerships. In 2022, our agency's budget was about $6 billion, and almost $2.8 billion of that was grants through 2,500 grants. And I will tell you that the education grants among those are incredibly small piece of the pie. If you added up all our education-focused granting programs in a given year, it'd be in the tens of millions. So out of 2.6 billion, they're very small. So the vast majority of that funding is research and monitoring. And a number of you have been able to access our grants. We have some grantees yesterday. I was talking to Mike from SUNY Fredonia and the entire University of Toledo team about the exciting work they do with NOAA grant funding, but all those are through the education funding programs. And so if somebody can find a way to write successful proposals to research and monitoring focused funding opportunities for Globe activities, that would be fantastic. One caveat, the majority of them are focused on US-based institutions, though.
Yeah, so similar to NSF and in some way to NOAA, NASA has a number of grant funding programs. So I sit within the Earth Science Division and the Research and Application area, and we do fund research projects throughout our different focus areas. We also have an applied science program that does also give out funding, including capacity building, and there are 2 that have international scope. And within the U.S., we do, through the U.S. Country Coordinating Office, we do offer also mini grants for partners to do globe-related partnership work. And they are along 3 different strains. One of them is about enhancing the training and education. And things that you can propose to this include developing innovative approaches, materials, resources, and matching global materials to state standards, that type of thing. The second one is foster inclusive participation, and this includes organizing student-led research projects, organize internship for students to contribute to science data collection. And the third one is about strengthening partnership. So you can propose to get up to $5,000 in any of these projects that you propose to build and strengthen partnership workshops, share resources with another institution, with the partnering schools, and any kind of that sort. And I mean, Jen is here, and I think the U.S. Country Coordinating Office is designed this to be very flexible. Depends on what you think you need to implement GLOBE better, to meet GLOBE's mission and vision. And so if you think, I think these are very broad categories, but if you think you have things that sort of fall outside of it, or if you would like to discuss, I think Jen and her team would be happy to do that with you.
Thank you all for great answers. And you even answered the next question already, which is how can mini grants help educators implement GLOBE? And what I heard was there's lots of flexibility with that. That's wonderful. Thank you. How about a question from our audience today? Who wants to go first?
Okay, hello. I'm Matthijs Begijn from the Netherlands, and I first would like to do a little fashion show. Look at my T-shirt. Yeah. Well, you should cheer for South Africa, because this was made by. This was my first international GLOBE meeting. It was in 2008 in South Africa, and it was really great. Thank you, Mark, and your team. So, that being said, I would like to follow up on the previous question, actually, because yesterday we had this wonderful speech of Leila about satellite measurements and how GLOBE protocols could tap into that. And I was wondering if we could get her and more scientists into the GLOBE program. Because what we do, for example, in the Netherlands, we have for every project that we have a scientist. And this scientist is the face of the project. This scientist is asking students to collaborate on the research. This scientist gives them an urgency to do the research, and gives feedback on the data that has been gathered. And I think it would be good for GLOBE if we have more of that, because there are some of those initiatives already, but I think there's a lot of room for more scientists that can really reach out to the community, say, hey, join my research, let's do it together, so that it becomes really citizen science. Is there an opportunity to get this previous remarks about funding, could we use that to get those scientists aboard and really become part of the GLOBE project?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Matthias. So, the GLOBE's mission since its beginning is that we are a science and an education program, right? So the emphasis on science was very, very strong. And since initially, the intention was always, well, how can we nurture this partnership so that students do participate in significant and meaningful ways towards the work that the scientific community does. And so to that end, I want to comment on that. I'm not sure if Leila is here, but our keynote speaker yesterday, and Brendan can speak to this as well. When you submit NSF proposals, there is a very important criteria component called the broader impact, and they speak exactly to this. How do you broaden the scientists' work to have societal impact? And education is one of such impact that you can have. And actually, I should really let Brendan take over on that point. And so, yeah, so how to nurture this kind of things? I think we need to have a support structure for scientists that do want to get involved, right? So that they can engage meaningfully with the community on different fronts. And that's not, if you're a scientist who try to do this, it's probably not immediately obvious to you how this community functions and what the opportunity are. So there needs to be a support structure, and I definitely have been thinking about that. And then the other way, I think we can have an example of what we actually have done this past year or so, is that we have started collaborating more strongly between GLOBE and the NASA Airborne Science Program. And so those are campaigns that are taking different types of measurements through our airborne science, flights, airplanes, and where they have sensors or measuring different processes, sometimes in anticipation in planning for future satellite missions. And two such collaboration was INPAC, and then the other one who was studying the microphysics of snow processes, and the other one was SNOWX that was in close collaboration with Alaska, where the students were actually taking measurements, snow depth, snow water equivalent measurements on the ground. And scientists were looking at it, they were collaborating. So these things are going on, and I definitely have been thinking about how we can do this more. And yeah.
Can I add one point to that?
Yeah.
I'll just add one point about that, that airborne science NASA connection. One is that we can also do this internationally because NASA does global science, and so these airborne science projects happen around the world. I don't know if Rod is here from the Philippines, can talk about a great collaboration we started just before the pandemic with a campaign that was happening in the Philippines. And then a second one that's upcoming is happening in South Africa for a NASA campaign that's looking at biodiversity and working with South Africa to help bring that to students there. So this is not just a US focus and collaboration, it can also happen internationally. And we've also been looking to make stronger connections with a SERVIR program. SERVIR is an international program that's a collaboration between the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and NASA to help use Earth observations for societal benefit writ large. And so we've been looking at making connections there because that's another way to leverage the international work that NASA does and the international science work. And so that's something we're looking to do as well. And then Brandon's gonna, I think, make a comment as well.
Thank you, Amy and Allison. To the broader impacts piece that Amy brought up, every proposal that comes into the National Science Foundation has to meet at least the two major criteria, which are intellectual merit, which is the science questions that are being asked or will be addressed, or what methodologies are being proposed to answer some question, and broader impacts, as Amy mentioned. So this is how the research team thinks that science would be useful to society in every way imaginable. And so when we're talking about, and thank you for the question, by the way, so when we're talking about engaging scientists into GLOBE, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that most scientists think GLOBE is just an education program, but you heard Amy say it, and all of you who have been involved with GLOBE for some time know it's more than that, right? It is science, it is education, it's citizen science, the technology is there. And so it's a complete package. And so the marketing of GLOBE and the branding of GLOBE to we would say the traditional science community is something that I've been thinking about, kind of along the lines of what Amy has been thinking about, and how to scale the potential of GLOBE to help scientists, number one, do their science, but also if those scientists are connected to the National Science Foundation through the proposal process, GLOBE is a perfect entity to help them address their broader impacts part of their proposals, because it is the total package, and that societal benefit is built into the mission and vision of GLOBE. So we at NSF are certainly looking forward to continuing working with our federal partners here and the GLOBE program, and scaling the potential and the marketing, what's it called, the profitability, we could say, if I'm using an economic term, of GLOBE to enhance the research enterprise. So we're looking forward to those continued conversations.
Thank you for those great answers. I'm way in the back of the room, and if we have a couple questions here, and then I'll move over toward the side. So if you could introduce yourself also, please.
Good morning. I'm Nikita Imani. I want to thank you and all of your agencies for all you do to facilitate GLOBE. I'm a social scientist, so I want to shift gears just a little bit. And it is the fact that as GLOBE expands, we have more than research to consider. Part of my charge is dealing with things like economics, dealing with challenges of different parts of the world, travel and mobility, dealing with neurodiversity and physical impairments, visual impairments, and other things. And of course, the upshot of all of that is that that also has to be funded. It needs resources. We also recognize that state funding is not always the pathway for doing that. I'm wondering if there is any consideration of a model I used to call co-funding, where obviously the core scientific and research aspects of the program are funded by the major agencies, but then members of the GLOBE constituency can also seek funding for some of those onboarding aspects of the human side of the equation. I'll give you a very simple example: being able to travel to the annual meeting. Financially, mobility, everything else. I'm aware of people who had challenges, and I'm also aware of sources of funding that might alleviate that. But I'm interested to know what the parameters are as we seek that funding and also try to operate within the strictures of the various agencies. Thank you.
I can take a first crack at that. Excellent question, and thank you for your work as a social scientist in the Earth system science kind of space here. At NSF, we have not just regular solicitation or calls for proposals, but we have maybe 11 or 12 other different mechanisms that individual organizations can seek for funding. And one of those mechanisms is the travel grant mechanism. It's a short 4 or 5 page proposal. I don't even know if it's that much. That can be submitted specifically to receive funding to travel to meetings or to research sites, et cetera. There is not a limitation on the participant category of the budget in these two ways. There's no limitation on nationality for participants. The organization that is submitting has to be a US-based organization, as you heard John mention earlier. But participants can be international participants. And secondly, I know there was a question, I believe, about overhead when proposals come into federal agencies, and a lot of the funding, if they receive an award, goes to overhead. In the participant at NSF, in the participant category of a proposal, overhead rates cannot be applied. So overhead does not apply to the participants. So if it's teachers and students, or maybe other scientists, et cetera, that you want to support to come to a GLOBE annual meeting or a learning expedition or any other kind of meeting, that is something I would encourage you to maybe look at NSF. You could start by reaching out to me, or you could do a little bit of research and reach out to specific programs within NSF and talk with the program officers there. And there may be ways to support travel and participation at meetings and other research experiences.
Thank you for that great answer, Brandon, and thank you for that fantastic question. I love to hear social sciences get represented. The funding program I work most closely on, the environmental literacy program, is education focused, but over time, if you look at our solicitations, they've evolved to include social sciences in a major way because we're looking at building community resilience, and you can't do that without the social aspects. And we have a social science council within NOAA, and one thing, in addition to adult participants, getting student participants here, and with all the amazing projects we saw yesterday afternoon or yesterday evening, and all the other amazing student work going on in NOAA, in Globe, I always want to make sure people are thinking about the federal agency's student opportunities and the fellowship programs we offer. And within NOAA, we have fellowships for people doing no related sciences. And so often people think, oh, that means I'm studying the ocean or the atmosphere. And yes, it means that, but it also means you're an educator, it means you're an economist, it means you're a social scientist. So getting students who are in social sciences to think about fellowship opportunities, which often include travel support from our agencies, from science agencies, as open to them, because our agencies do some social science, and so social sciences are NOAA sciences, they're NASA sciences as well.
Just to add one further point, I think that there's been increasing recognition that in order to understand Earth, in order to understand our climate, which is the major focus of a lot of our efforts up here, you have to understand the human dimension as well. And NASA has traditionally, and I think increasingly so, placed a greater emphasis on welcoming collaboration with people with different research backgrounds beyond physical sciences and biological sciences, including social sciences as well. And so that's certainly welcome to help achieve the objectives of the research proposed. So there are opportunities in that realm as well.
So good morning. My name is Charles Mwangi from Kenya. I'm the country coordinator. Again, I want to thank, like the rest of the team, to thank the partners for the great job that you've been doing supporting the GLOBE program. Especially for developing regions, the GLOBE program is a very nice package for helping build capacity for our students and also introducing them to science. Some of the issues that we grapple with is in terms of the funding support, and that has been indicated. And sometimes we get the feeling that the GLOBE kind of focuses on the the America region or the US region, and we would want to encourage you as partners and the community as well to try and explore how better we can support, maybe in the coming 10 years, now that you're working on the strategic plan, to see how better we can support the developing countries. And I'll give an example. In our country, we also have programs that we could potentially be able to leverage on and tap into the funding that is available, maybe from programs like the USAID. There was a mention, Aliso mentioned Severe. And there are many opportunities that even the embassies in our countries could help tap into, because maybe the funding is not directly accessible from this point. But try also from the embassies who have view and who sometimes do not have a better understanding of the GLOBE program, to try and see how we can tap into that resource. And the other challenge will be to explore the possibility of expanding to other STEM disciplines. NASA is known about satellites. We don't seem to have a component of STEM, if I might use the term STEM, like say nanosatellite development or even model rocketry. And that would have a huge impact for our students who want to do also something fun as they collect data. And again, we really appreciate all the support that continues to come our way. Thank you.
Well, I would like to speak to that. For the U.S. embassies and the consulates, I really want to encourage all our country coordinators to be in good relationship and contact with the U.S. Embassy contact. It will either be a science officer or sometimes it's a public affairs person. And to know who the right person is essential to getting the support you need and collaborations that can help you further your efforts with GLOBE. And every U.S. embassy and consulate they have a small pocket of funding to do these program supports. And it will be listed on their website, and notices of funding goes out publicly, and they will list the criteria and the eligibility to use the funding. But outside of funding, our embassies are prepared and encouraged and enthused to be able to collaborate with you for other types of support as well.
Yeah, that was great, Kia. And then I just add one thing. I think a lot of you already know that we have regional coordinating offices from around the world, and the regional coordinators are all here actually. And I think one thing that would be really good is for each country coordinator to voice what it is that you need, or what kind of resource and activities that you think you would do to broaden the impact of GLOBE in your respective country, and filter that up to the regional coordinators who are in constant and contact with the implementation office. And then through that, I also hear about it, and the sponsor also hear about that. So I just want to encourage you to, besides that embassy communication chain, I also encourage you to really reach out to your regional coordinators.
Can regional coordinators raise your hands if you're in the room right now? Okay, take a look around. I think we have time for one more question. Becky?
Okay, kind of a question here. Becky Boger, Brooklyn College Science Working Group. I don't know if you mentioned this, pointing to the NASA representatives of an international opportunity with the Space Apps Challenge, which there's going to be one in October. And I want to highlight some work that's been done in the Philippines. A few years ago, they came up with an early warning system for dengue fever. Okay, why can't we do that using GLOBE data, GLOBE community, to deal with other issues of societal needs, be it malaria, be it dengue, be it early warning system for food security? So this is a way of bringing in other people, other scientists, into the GLOBE community to address societal needs. So that, I was just looking up here, the NASA Space Apps Challenge, the hackathon, Global Hackathon is October 7th and 8th. So maybe this is something to plant some seeds in people's ears or whatever, in minds, about connecting that with GLOBE. Anyway, just, there.
Thank you for the reminder on that, Becky. That's a great point. And then whereas so actually Space App registration just opened, I believe, earlier. If not, it will be opening very shortly. So that's an excellent point.
Let's give a round of applause for our wonderful sponsors. And I don't know if they're okay with this, but if you have a burning question that you didn't get to ask out loud, would you be available to take one-on-ones?
I was just going to say, we're going to be here all week, so please feel free to just, grab one of us if you have any questions, and then I'm sure Brendan will be open to having questions by email as well.